Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Asterisk Live. Today we have with us not only David Duffett, the Asterisk Community Manager and Director. We also have with us Keith Casey, who's the Director of Product for Clarify.io, and will be speaking at AstriCon in October. So we're very excited to have Keith with us, and I'm going to turn it over to David to get us started.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Julie. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to have you along, Keith. And we were on the VUC last Friday together, weren't we, talking about AstriCon as well. So it's kind of a reprise of our interaction in a hangout, and it's good to have you along. So, yeah, AstriCon 2015 is coming along. We're going to be in Orlando, 13th to 15th of October. But before we talked about your involvement with AstriCon, I wonder if you could just give us a bit of a background to how you got into the communications world, Keith, and what you're up to now, because I noticed it says clarify.io on your label there, and I wonder if you could give us some information about that.
Oh, geez, background in the communications world, so going back to ancient times, my undergrad is actually in electrical engineering with signal processing background. So I actually approached the communications world from that perspective of signal quality, signal-to-noise ratio, speech recognition, audio analysis, all those sorts of things. So I approached it from a less of a human focused thing and more of a signals and systems focus. So from there, I did various things, and for the federal government, did some asterisk work back in 2004, 2005. So that was a little while ago, and have since then stopped using asterisk for a few years. Joined Twilio for a while. Was a developer evangelist there for about 2.5 years. While I was based in Austin here, I traveled all over North America doing different things, hackathons, demos, things like that. Left Twilio about 1.5 years ago. Started getting back into Asterisk again, playing with it, especially with the API. I think that's one of the things that Twilio really nailed was on the API side of things. So trying to do comparable things on the Asterisk world, and those things generally work. So it's been pretty exciting, pretty fun there. But in the last year or so, I've been with a company called Clarify. We make audio and video searchable, and then we allow you to sort of understand your media. So you can take things like phone calls or news broadcasts or training videos, and we tell you who said what when down to the millisecond, and then we allow you to extract keywords. So if you want to know every time somebody says, cancel my account or upgrade my account, here's my credit card number, or help me, we can tell you that sort of thing.
Right, and can you do transcription as well, or is that not really part of the picture?
That is part of the picture. It's sort of secondary to what we want to do. Transcripts are hard and they're expensive, and so for the most part, we found that they're not really relevant most of the time, and that our automated systems will take care of most of the work for you.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating world, the world of speech technologies, automatic speech recognition and text-to-speech, and of course another one that was there, or is there as well, just in the general speech technology world, is speaker verification and identification, SVI. Yeah. Did you have any involvement with any of that at any time?
No, not yet. Ask me that question again in a few months.
I wondered. I thought you were going to say, "Well, I did, but I can't tell you, otherwise I'd have to kill you."
No. That's not going. That's not going to happen. Don't worry about that one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that to me is a great opportunity if somebody wanted to do that inside the Asterisk community, because of course Asterisk can hook up with things like Vestec, LumenVox, with Clarify, with various other technologies. Kepstrel as well for things like text-to-speech and speech recognition, but I don't know of any adjunct technology that will provide SVI, speaker verification and identification at this stage. Anyway, just a little aside, that one.
No, it's an aside that we've been looking at. It's fascinating. Like the things you might be able to do with it are great. The problem we run into from a scientific side of things is that a phone call is fundamentally pretty low bandwidth, so there's not a whole lot of information there to validate and to verify people against. So you have to be really careful in how you approach it. So we're looking at different ways. Now that we've got more higher bandwidth, higher resolution data coming across phone lines, we can do a lot more stuff, but that's still pretty embryonic at this stage.
Yes, very much so. Of course, when we think about speech recognition on the desktop, you know, you're there saying the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog 50 times and training the system, and you might have a high quality microphone and all that kind of stuff. But when we think about doing speech recognition on a phone line, you're quite right. You've got reduced bandwidth, crackles and pops. People don't want to train the system. They want the system to take a best guess pretty quick, don't they?
Yeah, and you start talking, and that's just line noise. When you start talking about background noise, other people talking, you know, taking a call from a restaurant or at a coffee shop, there's a lot of other language and other words that you might pick up that just aren't relevant to the conversation itself.
Fascinating world, speech technology. Fascinating. Okay, so you've been involved with Astricon because you spoke last year, and one of the things that, one of the jobs I do is help select the people that are going to speak and the topics they're going to speak about Astricon. And yours are always a joy to look at when I read the various descriptions of what people plan to talk about, because you provide a great set of provocative titles usually, Keith. I'm thinking of 12 Reasons Why Your API Sucks. That's one of them that you did last year. So tell us just generally about the background of the sets of talks that you suggested with us for Astricon. I know this year you suggested more than one. The one that we've chosen is the API utility belt. But if you want to give people the kind of general thing you talk about, that would be great.
So I love talking about APIs. I love talking about how to do them better, how to add to your business and transform your business as a result of using APIs, whether that's from a customer support perspective of just having an accurate view of the customer when they call, being able to say, here are their trouble tickets, here are their Salesforce records, be able to pull that information together, and to be able to do that on support tickets when they email, to be able to do that on outbound calls, to just have an idea of what's going on in the organization as a result of these things. So 12 Reasons Your API Sucks came about sort of as not quite of a drunken rant, but that was sort of the philosophy that went behind it. It's funny, I actually gave that at a bank conference last year, and I pitched them on the title and the description, and they said, this description's great, you can't use this title. So I changed the title to 12 Steps to Successfully Launching Your API. And then the second slide had my real title of 12 Reasons Your API Sucks. But that made it past the censor sort of thing. But this year, building your API utility belt, funny enough, I was watching Batman. And Batman has this great thing where he's always got the best tool for the job. No matter the absurdity or the complexity of the situation, he reaches down to his utility belt. He says, I will pull out the whatever, and that tool solves the job. And I realized, like, as an API designer, developer, user, we don't have the equivalent. There's not a way to be able to sort of reach into our utility belt and say, here's the tool that solves this particular job. And that kind of sucks. So I looked around and I said, okay, how can we make this better? How can we change this sort of thing? So I looked around at common API tools, common HTTP tools. So we start from the low end with curl, just like, you know, pushing individual bytes almost, and sort of build up from there and say, here's 7 tools that you should be aware of, that you should have some exposure to. And I found out a lot of times that the tools are there, we just don't know they exist. So I want to be able to sort of equip people to do something cool with them and make their lives easier.
Yeah, great. And the title is very snappy and descriptive. And it kind of fits in with Asterisk, because Asterisk is often known as the Swiss Army knife. In the world of communications, because there's a kind of a blade you can pull out for each thing. So the whole utility belt fits in nicely as well. So how would you describe your target audience for the talk you're bringing to Astricon this year, Keith?
So I would say people who are working with APIs on a regular basis, not necessarily every single day, but whether they're building, designing, using APIs, and they run into problems. Last time I checked, we don't write perfect code. I certainly don't. You can look at my history on GitHub to see the result of that. And we make mistakes. And just being able to discover, analyze, and debug those mistakes, I think anyone who's sort of in that world, which hopefully is any software developer, I think can make use of it here.
Right. Okay. Now, I don't want to go too deep, but being a guy that's obviously thought about good and bad APIs, what are your thoughts on the latest one that's going to Asterisk, came into Asterisk in Asterisk 12, called the ARI, the Asterisk RESTful interface?
I think I think it has a lot of potential. I think it's a little rough around the edges still. I think there's a lot of places for some improvement, but I think it sort of makes the sort of individual pieces visible and lets you manipulate those really easily and really quickly, and I think that's great. I think sort of now that it's been out there for a while, I think sort of thinking in terms of higher order things, of we sort of taken care of the first tier. Now that we have a little bit of understanding of what people do with it, let's make some sort of helper things on top of it to make it more powerful and then to make using it simpler. But I think it's definitely pointing in the right direction.
Well, that's great, yes, and you're quite right. You have to refine these things in the light of the way you see people using them, don't you?
Yeah, and it's practically impossible to predict that on day one. You put a lot of tools out there, you don't know what people are going to do with them. You really need sort of real-world feedback, and for people to stub their toe and figure out this works well, this doesn't work well, how can we make this better?
Right. So you spoke, I think last year was your first Astricon,
yes.
And you spoke there. So tell us a little bit about what's brought you back and what made you submit another talk. And the things that you enjoyed about the last time round and the things you're looking forward to in the next time round.
I think it's a great community, and I've worked pretty much with Steve Sokol and the Respoke crew quite a bit. In fact, I'm wearing a Respoke shirt right now, so
nice.
bonus points for that. And I think they're doing great work on the WebRTC front, and I'm really excited about that in addition to Asterisk itself. So I just think it's a great community, and it's a community that I'm trying to understand more as a product manager over at Clarify, because we're trying to build things that are useful to groups like call centers and stuff like that. And I'm not there to sell; I'm there to understand.
Well, that's great, and yeah, certainly the talk you did last year was highly educational, and that is the hallmark of an Astricon talk. We don't go into the thinly veiled pitch. If we find any of those, we have to administer a beating, and Julie is head of doing that. She makes sure that we don't have any messing about there. So yeah, that's good. Okay, and if somebody's watching this and they've never been to an Astricon, they're using Asterisk in one way or another, but they've never made that step and come to meet the community, what would you tell them to encourage them to do so, Keith?
So I'd say the same thing I say about most open source like tech conferences and things like that, is that there's no way you can be an expert on every single aspect. There's just too much to understand, there's too many use cases, there's too many scenarios. Instead, if you look at the community as like an extended research and development group, you may not have that understanding, but the person you're sitting next to in that session might have just solved that problem you've been struggling with. So sit down, have conversations, have conversations over drinks, sit with people you don't know at lunch. And I think there's a lot of learning and understanding and growth that you can have as a result of that. And you never know, if you're not happy at your current job, odds are somebody is hiring. So I think there's a variety of reasons to attend.
There sure is. No, actually, you hit on an important point, which came out when we were talking to Russell Bryant from Red Hat, who works on the OpenStack project as well. He was talking about the hallway track at conferences, and in particular at Astricon, and the ability to meet and mix with people that you wouldn't normally get the opportunity to do that with.
Yeah, and I think these sort of cross-industry conferences are some of the best, because it's really hard to go to, like if you're a real estate agent, if you in real estate technology and you go to a real estate technology conferences and they are there, odds are the person you're sitting next to is a competitor, and they may not want to share that information. At something like Astricon, where it's cross-technology, cross-industry sort of things like that, that person sitting next to you might have the solution, and they're not competitive. There's definitely a spirit of, hey, look, I've solved this problem here, let me show you how. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, very much so. All right, well, thanks for summarising that so well. That's great. So I'm pretty much towards the end of the questions I had for Keith, Julie. Is there any special golden questions you've been holding back that you'd like to spring on him?
Not really. My one big question would be, was last year your first Astricon, Keith?
Yes, it was. I followed it online and stuff before that, but that was my first time actually going and meeting a lot of the faces in the community.
So you touched a little bit on, why you're coming back. Do you have any advice for maybe the first-time folks who will be attending Astricon, and what kind of advice would you give them to get the most impact out of their visit?
Yeah, so I'd say sort of tongue in cheek, the biggest problem I faced last year is I booked my hotel really late. So I was at a nearby hotel, which was like 3 miles away, which is just far enough in Vegas to make it miserable. So definitely book your hotel early. Be in the same conference venue. And I think the sort of secondary, the serious aspect of that is that's how you run into those conference or those hallway tracks. You know, having restaurants at the venue, stopping by bars, running into people, having those conversations, I think is one of the most important parts. And if you're not on site for that, it makes it a lot harder to do those sorts of things.
It sure does.
Wear good walking shoes.
Wear good walking shoes. That's very important.
Yeah.
We should mention that we got an extra special price at the hotel, which I think is $169 a night, isn't it, Julie?
It is. It's at the beautiful Lowe's Resort. It's part of the Universal Studios resort. Beautiful hotel. It's $169 a night. If you're looking for some cheaper options, there are hotels nearby. But again, to Keith's point, it's really, really important. And you get more out of the conference if you can stay on site and just, have the hallway conversations or, the networking, just meeting someone in a coffee shop or running into them at the bar or the restaurant. So. Yes,
but very much so. In fact, on the VUC last week, somebody was saying that the kind of hotel we're in would normally be $300 a night, and so the $169 rate is excellent. And by the way, just as a general point, and you know this much better than anybody, Julie, this is why it takes a good bit of work to pick the right venue for Astricon, doesn't it? Because you've got to have the size of venue to accommodate the number of people we do, but also to fit in with those things that Keith talked about, the various cafes and restaurants that are within the venue complex.
Yes, that's very true. So picking sites that are easy to fly into for our international folks. So Orlando is a perfect area for that. It's easy to get to, and then one of our criteria when we choose a hotel is that it has kind of a bars, restaurants, and things nearby or within the hotel where people can gather and hang out.
And of course, it has to cope with the Wi-Fi requirements of an audience where each individual person has about 8 devices usually.
That is correct, and we beat them up over that.
We sure do. Okay, so Keith, one of the things that happened, this hasn't been a job interview. One of the things that very often happens near the end of a job interview is the interviewers turn it over to the interviewee and say, is there anything else you'd like to say? So Keith, is there anything else you'd like to say before we clear down?
Not specifically. I'm looking forward to it again this year. It was a great crowd last year and learned a lot, and looking forward to it again already.
Well, great. Thank you, Keith, for giving us your time. We appreciate it. We appreciated your participation last year, and we're very flattered that you've chosen to come back this year.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
All the best.
All right, everyone. Take care. Have a great day.